Today we're going to learn how to make a simple dodge the obstacle game in Scratch, which will look something like this. There will be balls that fall from the top of the screen, and our player has to move left and right to avoid getting hit by any of these balls. So let's get started. The first step is to create our player. I'm going to paint my own sprite because I want to use a simple rectangle as our player. At the start of the game, we want our player to be at the bottom of the screen. So the first thing I'm going to do is when green flag is clicked, I'm going to add a go-to block which goes to x equals 0 and y equals negative 155, and that's going to be the bottom of the screen. The next step is to allow the players to move left and right. We're going to do that with the left and right arrow keys. So let's put that in. So here we have those two if statements. If the right key is pressed and if the left key is pressed. We've put these statements inside a forever loop because we want the game to continuously check if either key is pressed. So if the right key is pressed, we want to move in the rightwards direction. We're going to use the move steps block to do so. The move steps block moves us in the direction that we're facing. And since, as you can see over here, we're facing in the rightwards direction, to move to the right, we're going to have to move a positive number of steps. So we'll move positive 10 steps. And to move to the left, we're going to have to move a negative number of steps. So we're going to move negative 10 steps. The next step is to create the balls that are going to fall from the top of the screen. So what I'm going to do is go to choose a sprite and look for ball. There it is. And I'm going to make it slightly smaller, so 75. That seems good. In the game, we want multiple balls to be falling. So we're not going to do that by creating multiple sprites. But what we're going to do instead is create multiple clones of this sprite. The first thing I'm going to do is grab when green flag clicked. And then I'm going to put a forever loop, and the first thing I'm going to put in is a wait statement, and after that I'm going to put in create clone of myself. So the value that we put inside this wait statement is what determines the rate at which the clones spawn. So as of now it's 1 second, so that means every second we're going to create a clone of this ball. But what we want instead is that as the game progresses, we want that the speed at which clones are created, we want that speed to get faster. So what we're going to do instead is create a variable called spawn speed. And what we're going to do is we're going to put that inside the wait block. And now what we can do is that as the game progresses, we can reduce the value of spawn speed, and that's going to increase the rate at which the clones spawn. And we're also going to put a height block here because we don't want the original ball to stay on the screen. We just want to use it for creating clones. Next, what we're going to do is drag the when I start as a clone block, and whatever code we put underneath this is going to be executed for each and every clone that we create. So when a clone starts, the first thing we want to do is show it, because otherwise it would stay hidden because we applied a height block to the original one. So what we want is that every clone starts off at the top of the screen, but we also wanted to start off at different x coordinates. So what we're going to do first is go to motion and grab the go to block, and we're going to set the y to 180, so that's the top of the screen. But the x is going to be a range from negative 225 to positive 225, so that's the left end of the screen to the right end of the screen. So now as you can see, we're going to have balls that spawn at the top of the screen but at different x coordinates. The next step is to make the balls fall down. We're going to do that with the move block. But before that, what we have to do is change the ball's direction from 90 to 180 so that it points downwards. So make it 180. So now when we add our move block, the ball is going to fall straight down. Like we did with spawn speed, we want the balls to fall down faster as the game progresses. And we're going to do that by creating another variable. So we're going to call this variable fall speed. So instead of having 10 steps inside this move block, what we're going to do is have our variable, which is called fall speed, inside this move block. So now what we can do is, as the game progresses, we can increase fall speed, and therefore that's going to increase the speed at which the balls fall down. Now another thing that we want to add is their starting values. So the starting value of fall speed and the starting value of spawn speed. So I'm just gonna start spawn speed off at 0.75 and fall speed off at 6. But you guys can play around with the values and see what works for you. The next step is to detect if any of the balls hit the player. And we're going to do that with an if statement. So if touching sprite 1. And we're going to put this inside when I start a clone, inside this forever loop. And so therefore it's going to check this for each and every clone. So if any of the clones touch sprite 1, we're going to end the game. So stop all. Next, let's create our score variable, which will increase each time the player dodges the ball. The player dodges the ball. What that really means is that the ball goes below the player. And we can detect that by comparing the y coordinates of the player and the ball. If the y coordinate of the ball is less than the y coordinate of the player, which is negative 155, we know that the player has dodged the ball. So let's put that statement in code. Here is that if statement. We're going to put it inside the forever loop of the clone block because we want it to be checked for each and every ball. So if the y position of the ball, of any ball, is less than negative 155, we're going to increase the score by 1. So change score by 1. And then we're also going to delete the clone because we don't want the ball to just stay at the bottom edge. We're going to delete it. So we're going to delete this clone. But we're also going to add a wait block over here because otherwise it's going to change the score by more than 1. We wanted to change it only by 1. So we'll add a wait block only for 0.05 seconds and that'll work. And another thing that we want to do is at the beginning of the game, we want to set the score to 0. Now let's write code that changes the two variables we created earlier, fall speed and spawn speed, over time so that the game gets harder. So what I'm going to do first is, when the green flag is clicked, I'm going to create a forever loop in which I have a wait block, and that wait block is going to be for 10 seconds. And then what I'm going to do is change our variables by a certain amount. I'm going to change spawn speed by 0.05. So every 10 seconds the spawn speed will decrease by negative 0.05. So the spawn speed is going to decrease by 0.05 seconds. And we're going to change our fall speed by 1. So that's going to make it faster every 10 seconds. We need to create a limit to the values these variables can reach. Otherwise the game would get unplayable. For example, let's say if we continuously decrease spawn speed every 10 seconds, there's going to be a point, perhaps 2 minutes or 3 minutes into the game, where the spawn speed would reach such a low value that there's going to be balls spawning right after each other instantaneously, and that's going to make the game unplayable. So what we're going to do is create a limit to the values these variables can reach. So I've created my limits here. The spawn speed will not get less than 0.3, and the fall speed will not get greater than 12. And that's because for this first if statement, the value of spawn speed will only decrease if it's greater than 0.3. If it's not greater than 0.3, the value will not decrease, and therefore the value of spawn speed will remain at 0.3. And the same happens for fall speed in the second if statement. Now we're pretty much done. I'm just going to change a few things. First, I'm going to make this a large readout, and the second thing I'm going to do is add some background music. So I'm going to go to our player sprite and I'm going to go to sounds, and I've already chosen one, which is classical piano, but you guys can browse through the gallery and see other sounds that you like. So what I'm going to do is, when the green flag is clicked, I'm going to put a forever loop and I'm going to play the sound until it's done, and it's going to play, and this is going to play the sound in a loop. And there you have it for this tutorial. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below.